1-800-GOLF tip. Back in the early 90s, a mysterious phone number started popping up on billboards and newspaper ads across North America. It was a vanity number that spelled out 1-800-GOLF tip. Seeing this, most people assumed that it was an innocent golf tips helpline or something of the sort. However, that couldn't have been further from the truth. When someone did call the number, they were greeted by the sound of a person breathing into his microphone. This was then quickly followed by the same person counting off numbers 1 through 10 in an Indian or Middle Eastern accent over and over again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. This sequence kept repeating for minutes on end, leaving many people confused and prompting them to hang up. However, this counting didn't last forever. People discovered that after about 10 to 12 minutes, the voice faded into silence and was replaced by static noise. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But that wasn't all, because the ones who kept on listening were eventually startled by a loud and unsettling siren sound. Not only was this extremely creepy, it also left the listener with many unanswered questions, like what was the purpose of this strange counting, and why would anyone pay money to advertise this number in the first place? Over the next few years, the 1-800-GOLF tip number became a modern folktale of sorts. People heard about it through word of mouth, dialed it out of curiosity, and were all met with the same eerie voice. This phenomenon was widespread enough to become one of the earliest internet rabbit holes, as I found mentions of the number dating as far back as 2003. However, the complete lack of information gave rise to a flood of theories attempting to explain the mystery, including one which speculated if 1-800-GOLF tip had something to do with number stations, which, for those who don't know, are shortwave radio broadcasts of unknown origin. These usually transmit sequences of spoken numbers, tones, or coded messages, often in eerie, mechanical voices. Many believe they're used by governments to send encrypted instructions to spies in the field. So, according to this theory, the 1-800-GOLF tip number served a similar purpose. Another theory that many came up with was that this number was a part of a marketing campaign, probably to gather working phone numbers for telemarketing later or as a social experiment to generate hype for an upcoming product. However, none of these theories hold up to scrutiny. For starters, if number stations are indeed used to transmit instructions to spies, their entire purpose is to deliver messages anonymously, leaving no trace of who received them. A purpose that's negated completely if the receiver had to call a phone number that could potentially be traced back to them. On the other hand, the marketing and number collection theories don't hold much weight either. There are far more effective ways to achieve both goals without depending on an unlikely chance of the number spreading through word of mouth and attracting calls from curious people. Ultimately, despite many attempts at uncovering the truth, 1-800-GOLF tip remained a mystery for nearly 3 decades. That is, until a Reddit user took it upon himself to get to the bottom of it. He spent over 4 years combing through the available leads and gathering personal anecdotes from people who remembered calling this number in their childhood. And as it turns out, the 1-800-GOLF tip rabbit hole wasn't a viral hoax or a disturbing conspiracy. Instead, it was the result of a simple mistake. You see, back in 1994, the Professional Golfers Association, or PGA, was touring across North America. And in an effort to promote the sport, they set up billboards and purchased ad space in newspapers, listing their golf tip line 1-800-GOLF tip. However, this line was only meant to be active for 2 days, as evident from this 1994 ad in the Tampa Tribune, which reads, "Golfers nationwide can receive golf tips today and Sunday via a toll-free instruction hotline presented by the PGA of America and USA Today. The hotline, featuring nearly 100 PGA members, is being offered in conjunction for the Tommy Armour PGA Teaching and Coaching Summit in New Orleans. Call 800-GOLF tip." Following the campaign, billboards in low-traffic areas that never received the new ad ended up staying up far longer than intended. However, by then the tip line was replaced by a placeholder test message from the phone company. As for the disturbing siren sound at the end, it was just one of the many pre-recorded tones phone companies used to signal that the call hadn't reached its intended destination. In the end, 1-800-GOLF-TIP wasn't a covert spy line or a clever marketing ploy. It was simply the byproduct of a phone company forgetting to disconnect a test number. And while the truth isn't as thrilling as some might have hoped, it brought closure to those who spent nearly 30 years chasing the mystery. User 927. On August 4th, 2006, AOL, which was an early search engine like Google, released a text file on its website containing 20 million search queries from its users. These queries were collected from over 650,000 users and spanned a period of about 3 months. Whether this release was intentional or simply a private file mistakenly made public remains unclear. The users' actual names were replaced with anonymous filler numbers starting at 1, so like user 34 or user 152, but based solely on each user's searches, you could usually still find out a lot about them. The company did apologize and remove the file 3 days later, but it was already too late. Thousands of people had already copied the file and began combing through it out of curiosity. And while most of the searches were exactly what you'd expect, like users looking for restaurant recommendations, planning vacations, or searching for medical symptoms, user 927's search history stood out from the rest for just how shockingly disturbing it was. It started off quite normal, with user 927 looking up songs from various artists. There were also some medical queries, such as the time it takes for a broken leg to heal and fungal infections, as well as numerous searches on different types of flowers. But it didn't take long for user 927's searches to shift into the realm of deeply inappropriate and not safe for work. Now, due to the explicit nature of these searches, I can't share them on YouTube, but just note that many of them were deeply unsettling and painted a troubling picture of the user behind them. However, this was only the beginning. As the weeks went on, user 927's searches grew darker, more specific, and far more disturbing. It went from looking up questionable stuff to searching for straight up illegal and harmful material. The unsettling nature of user 927's search history sparked widespread discussion and concern across the internet, even inspiring an off-Broadway play which delved into themes of cyberstalking, privacy, and the implications of our digital footprints. Despite their infamy, however, user 927 was never identified. All we know is that they were likely from Colorado based on a single search from the state's official government website. It's also likely that these searches were made on a shared family computer, since they often flip-flopped between wholesome searches and illegal not safe for work searches. Apart from that, the identity of user 927 remains a mystery to this day. Google Translate anomalies. Near the end of 2017, a few users on 4chan noticed a bizarre phenomenon with Google Translate, where typing in incoherent and broken strings of characters led to eerily normal-sounding responses. For instance, typing the letter O and P repeatedly resulted in Google Translate telling the user to click on the image to view more. Similarly, using P and S instead produced something that resembled a snippet from an email. Now, it would have been easy to write it off as a coincidence, just random characters accidentally forming something familiar, but as more people tested it, the more weirdly consistent the outputs became, like the Translate app telling the user to go ahead and ask any questions they might have, or in some instances, telling them that they have a chronic disease, a tendency to be infected with the virus, and that they will have a lot of pain. How could a nonsensical mix of characters produce such specific and sometimes threatening translations? At this point, the most reasonable explanation was that this was simply a glitch, perhaps an obscure bug in Google's translate system. After all, most of these eerie translations occurred specifically when converting between Somali and English, suggesting a potential flaw in how the algorithm handled that language pair. But what made this seem unlikely was the amount of unique information Google Translate was showing in response to these requests, including things like a link to a Facebook post or what appeared to be an email address. In a similar vein, a few specific combinations also provided results that read like a private conversation between two people, stating things like, "You will be given the opportunity to be re-elected," and "This is a great way for you to come to our country." So, what is going on here? Unfortunately, despite the online interest, Google never acknowledged the problem, so we can only speculate. And while I did come across some wild theories suggesting that Google Translate was somehow a sentient AI trying to communicate outside of its intended purpose, these theories are of course not true. One possible theory is that this was the work of a rogue Google employee, someone who out of frustration or boredom decided to tamper with the system. Maybe they were trying to degrade the app's quality out of spite, or perhaps they simply wanted to leave behind a hidden Easter egg for others to discover. However, someone risking their lucrative career at Google for something this uneventful and niche is fairly hard to justify. From everything I've seen, the most plausible explanation is still the one mentioned earlier, that all of this was just a glitch or an overlooked bug in the system. As for the oddly specific bits of information, those could have come from any number of internal sources. Consider this: massive platforms like Gmail, Google Drive, and Search process billions of data points every day. So it's not hard to imagine a coding error causing Google Translate to inadvertently pull fragments from those interconnected services, which, if true, would be a real security and privacy threat. That said, I tried replicating the troubling prompts myself and came up empty. Whatever was causing the bizarre outputs seems to have been quietly patched out by Google since the story first broke out. Ted the Caver. On March 23, 2001, a man named Ted began sharing his caving experience in an online journal. The story started a few months earlier in December 30th, 2000, when Ted and his friend B were exploring a cave they thought they knew well. But on this particular trip, they found something unexpected: a small hole on a wall near the cave's lowest point. As Ted kneeled down to get a closer look inside, he felt a faint breeze coming from the hole, suggesting there might be an entire unexplored cave system lying just beyond the narrow opening. The excitement of being the first people to explore this new section of the cave outweighed the inherent danger of venturing into the unknown. After surveying the area, Ted and B decided to widen the hole and carve out a passable corridor. About a month later, on the 27th of January, they began to chisel at the rock. But something felt strange. The two felt a suspiciously strong wind coming from the hole, followed by low, ominous rumbling from deep within the cave. They tried to rationalize these occurrences, thinking that the wind was just blowing a little stronger outside, and that the rumbling noise was coming from the trucks driving on the mountain road above the cave. So, despite the noise growing louder and more frequent, they pressed on. A decision they'd come to regret, as the sense of unease kept getting worse, fueled by a series of increasingly disturbing occurrences, like their dog becoming agitated as soon as it reached the cave and refused to go anywhere near the hole, or the two hearing what Ted described as the most terrible scream he has ever heard from the hole, lasting nearly 10 seconds. Once the hole was big enough, Ted crawled through to the other side, only to be met by a massive, unnaturally round boulder sitting in the center of a small chamber. There were also hieroglyph-like drawings on the walls depicting people standing around a strange symbol. He took photos on his disposable Polaroid camera and came back. But when he tried to develop those pictures later that day, every photo he took of the round rock and its surroundings came out completely blank. They then tried recruiting another experienced caver, Joe, hoping a fresh perspective might help. However, Joe returned minutes after he went in, visibly shaken by the experience. He refused to speak about what he saw on the other side and just stated that he would never enter that hole again. Left with no other choice, Ted decided to explore the new area himself. But as soon as he reached the other side, he began hearing the rock scraping sound again. He panicked and ran for the exit, only to see the round rock in a different position than it originally was. As he crawled through the hole, a nauseating stench began to fill the cave. Then, just as he and B reached the entrance, something tugged on their rope. In a panic, B slashed it with his knife, sending whatever was climbing up crashing back into the darkness. Yet, their story doesn't end there. In his May 19, 2001 update, Ted talked about their plans to go back fully equipped to solve the mystery and capture definitive proof of the insides with photos and video footage. However, the updates never came, leaving readers to wonder what happened to Ted and B. Now, I should mention that back then, many online communities were skeptical about the authenticity of this story and internet rabbit hole. However, the irregular updates and accompanying photos were convincing enough to make many believe the story was real. But the story was completely fake. Back then, internet creepypastas, or fake horror stories presented as true, weren't really a thing, or at least weren't very common. Many people had no reason not to believe this story. Nowadays, the Ted the Caver story is often referred to as the internet's first creepypasta. In 2004, he joined a discussion about his story on a forum site and admitted he made it up. Apparently, they did explore the cave and actually took the pictures he posted on his journal, but everything about the round boulder, the drawings on the wall, and the chase at the end was completely fictional. However, none of this detracted from its position as the story that introduced the internet to creepypastas, a genre that's prevalent to this day. The Glitter Conspiracy. On the 21st of December 2018, New York Times posted an article titled, "What is Glitter?" This was supposed to be nothing more than an educational article on what glitter is and where it's used in our day-to-day lives. However, what its author didn't realize at the time was that this would ignite one of the most heavily debated rabbit holes in internet history. It started with an odd conversation between the article's writer and a manager from GlitterX, which is one of the largest glitter manufacturers in the US. When I asked Miss Dyer if she could tell me which industry served as GlitterX's biggest market, her answer was instant. "No, I absolutely know I can't." I was taken aback. "But you know what it is?" "Oh God, yes," she said and laughed. "You would never guess it. Let's just leave it at that." I asked if she could tell me why she couldn't tell me. "Because they don't want you to know that it's glitter. If I looked at it, I wouldn't know it was glitter?" "No, not really." "Would I be able to see the glitter?" "Oh, you'd be able to see something, but yeah, I can." The writer then asked if she could tell the buyer's name off record, but she refused completely. Not long after the article went live, someone posted their strange conversation on the Unresolved Mysteries subreddit, sparking a wave of speculation about who this mysterious client could be. One of the top comments under this post pointed towards a potential use by law enforcement as an ID for explosives, reading, "Micro-taggins. Multi-layered micro-glitter added to all commercial explosives. Simple to batch trace on-site after the detonation using only a microscope. Use dynamite for illegal purposes and leave evidence as clear as a fingerprint. Law enforcement probably don't want this fact circulating." And while this made some logical sense, others leaned toward crazier, conspiracy-adjacent theories. Like, this one user claimed that the government spreads glitter on beaches to increase their sparkle and by extension attract more tourists. A few people also suggested that the mystery buyer could be the US military, since glitter's reflective properties might make it useful for camouflaging equipment by deflecting radar signals. One user proposed a more unsettling theory that GlitterX's biggest client could be a toothpaste company using glitter to create the illusion of sparkling clean teeth. While the idea sounds absurd at first, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility given how common microplastics are in personal care products. However, none of these theories hold much merit. Microplastics and personal care products, including toothpastes, were banned back in July 2017, over a year before the New York Times interview. The military contract theory is also completely detached from the truth. In reality, the radar-absorbing coating used for fighter jets is made from iron and ferrite, not shiny plastics. So, while these theories were fascinating to sift through, none of them actually answered the one question that started it all. Who was buying all the glitter? This remained a mystery for almost an entire year before someone managed to uncover the truth. On the 8th of November 2019, the Endless Thread podcast dropped an episode titled The Great Glitter Mystery, and this had the answer people were looking for. Apparently, the answer was boat manufacturers. This might sound odd at first, but it actually makes a lot of sense when you consider the shimmering, reflective paint used on many newer boats. As for why GlitterX might be so secretive about the identity of their biggest client, one plausible reason could be environmental concerns. Glitter, especially the traditional kind made from microplastics, has been heavily criticized for its contribution to pollution, particularly in oceans where it can be harmful to marine life. So if it came out that companies were using it in boat paint and releasing untold amounts of microplastics into the ocean, it could spark public backlash or calls for regulation. In the end, the truth behind the glitter conspiracy was a lot more mundane than secret military contracts or explosive detection, leaving many to express their disappointment online. Polybius. Polybius is the name of a rumored arcade game that had a limited release in 1981 and has since been lost to time. As the story goes, a single cabinet of the game was installed in a random arcade in Portland, Oregon in 1981. The cabinet was plain without any fancy graphics on the sides, and the gameplay was described as weird and puzzle-like with action elements. This gameplay is also rumored to be surprisingly addictive. There are reports of teens spending hours playing this game to the point of getting dizzy and even fainting. However, there were also several claims suggesting that the dizziness and fainting were actually side effects of government-led mind control experiments conducted through the game. You see, according to the myth, men dressed in black suits would regularly visit the arcade. not to play Polybius, but to collect data from the machine, like on behalf of the CIA or some other three-letter agency. The cabinet also reportedly remained in arcades for only a brief period before mysteriously disappearing without a trace. This mix of addictive gameplay, side effects like amnesia and nightmares, combined with the alleged Men in Black sightings, cemented Polybius in urban legend history. But here's the thing, there's no concrete proof the game ever actually existed. No official records, no contemporary newspaper articles, nothing verifiable from 1981 mentions it. The only, quote, real evidence of its existence is this screenshot of the title screen, which looks a bit too advanced for its era, and this grainy black and white picture of an allegedly real Polybius cabinet. The high noise, overblown exposure, and overall low resolution makes it near impossible to extract any details. However, given the overall shape of the cabinet, this was likely a repurposed Namco cabinet with its stickers removed. And even if these images are real, there are no sources dating back to the 1980s that could verify their authenticity. In fact, from what I was able to find, one of the earliest mentions of Polybius in any gaming magazine or website was in the year 2000 on a website called coinop.org. The legend did become widespread enough to inspire enthusiasts into building their own real-life Polybius arcade cabinets. However, I wasn't able to find a single piece of evidence matching its original description. So, where did the story come from? It's likely a fascinating case of collective memory blending fact and fiction. As a comment on Reddit noted, Polybius wasn't real, but it was inspired by stories of surreal 80s vector games, people playing arcade games for too long and getting sick, and teens doing shady things that resulted in authorities coming into arcades. Think of it this way, the early 80s saw visually intense vector graphic games like Tempest, which could be quite disorienting, especially in a dimly lit, smoke-filled arcade. Arcades were also rowdy places where teenagers pushed boundaries, sometimes prompting authorities to monitor them for reasons like truancy or gambling. It's plausible that these separate, real occurrences, getting eye strain from a vector game, feeling ill after a marathon session, seeing officials in an arcade, morphed and merged over time into the singular, terrifying narrative of Polybius. Or it's also possible that the Polybius myth was the masterwork of a single, imaginative individual. Someone who managed to craft one of the most talked about rabbit holes in the history of internet gaming folklore. The Box of Crazy. On November 4th, 2013, Reddit user TramStopDan posted an Imgur album on the What's in This Thing subreddit titled, "Large box full of odd illustrations of an event, aka the Box of Crazy, found by the trash bins." On the surface, this looked like nothing more than an antique wooden briefcase. However, its contents told a completely different story. Inside, there were hundreds of documents containing text records of alleged UFO sightings, diagrams and schematics for complex otherworldly machinery, and hand-drawn illustrations of disturbing demonic creatures. The box also contained a lot of handwritten notes from the creator of all these illustrations, Daniel Christensen, as well as several maps and globe projections. Much of it was cryptic and difficult to decipher. However, even after reviewing just a small portion, it became clear that this was the work of someone who was deeply unwell. Some of his notes hinted at the possibility of him being a World War II veteran, which could explain the origin of his mental illness. However, that wasn't what started his fascination with aliens and extraterrestrial life forms. Some of the earliest documents in the box were from 1937, with some of the newest ones dating to 1977. In other words, Daniel remained fixated on this topic for over 4 decades. However, his earlier work was a lot tamer and more legible than whatever he came up with in his later years, hinting at his deteriorating mental health. As for the actual contents of this box, however, one particular topic stood out above the rest: his account of the incident that happened on July 7th, 1977. According to Daniel, Tampa Bay was hit by a tornado on that day, but that tornado was just to disguise alien ships used to make contact with Earth without getting spotted. He created several detailed illustrations of what he saw that day, and it's bizarre to say the least. In reality, there were no records of a tornado or any other extreme weather event happening in Tampa Bay on the 7th of July. That said, Daniel didn't choose this day at random. You see, a lot of Daniel's illustrations of the 7th of July include this same building as the center point for alien descent. This was the inverted pyramid on the St. Petersburg Pier in Tampa. Coincidentally, this building was also lit up with a massive laser light show installation on July 7th, 1977. So it's highly likely that Daniel witnessed this laser show, misinterpreted it as an alien encounter, and then spiraled into an obsession to document what he genuinely believed was a life-changing event. And the craziest part is, this was only a fraction of the work he'd produced in his lifetime. This is because as the story gained traction online, a Reddit user named That's My Box came forward, claiming that she was the previous owner of the wooden box Tram Stop Dan found. And apparently she was telling the truth. She moved into a new home in the 90s where she found a room full of Daniel's work. This included a chair-like machine he'd constructed, which according to his notes was the device he'd used for an out-of-body experience and time travel. Unfortunately, most of Daniel's stuff had to be thrown out, which is how Tram Stop Dan found the box. It really makes you wonder what other mind-bending contraptions, bizarre concepts, or odd events he might have noted down on paper during his lifetime. Erratas. On November 5th, 2015, an anonymous user posted a thread on 4chan talking about a strange conversation they had with a girl at work. The girl he talked with was, at the time, homeless and in a band. She also worked for a really shady company that was in the process of closing down. One day, her supervisors gave her and another employee 2 tape guns and instructed them to pack boxes. However, the tape in one of these guns had the word Erratas written on it. When she inquired about this word, her coworker told her to get rid of the tape gun and to not mention the word to any of the supervisors. Apparently, he used to work in IT, and one of his jobs was to flag employees who searched this term so they could be fired. The OP was curious about what Erratas meant. However, this was also the first time other 4chan users had encountered the word, so they couldn't offer much help in figuring out what it meant either. But then a month later, on December 19th, another anonymous user brought up Erratas again, hinting that it was some HR-related computer program. But this time the OP received an answer, which defined Erratas as a program that allows some specific third-party company unconditional access to employee information. This reply also mentioned major brands like UPS, Unilever, and Ecolab. About one more month later, on January 25th, a user on the music board talked about wanting to make music from obscure YouTube videos. They also included a list of video links they were interested in. The second of these links led to a video titled "YouTube is monitoring and controlling my life" that was posted just 2 days before the 4chan post. The owner of the channel that posted this video, Chronos for Life Jurassic Park, believed that he was being targeted by Erratas. This, along with a now-deleted Q&A video Chronos posted later, gave people a clearer picture of Erratas' true nature. Erratas, as many came to understand it, was a mass surveillance and censorship software allegedly used by powerful entities to securely monitor the public. What made Erratas so terrifyingly effective was its ability to erase its own existence. It would detect any time someone mentioned it across the internet and remove that reference without a trace. Chronos even posted a video titled "Here Goes Nothing" as bait for Erratas, hoping the advanced algorithm would target and delete the video, thereby proving it was real. But that wasn't all. Turning on captions revealed that the video also had hidden messages at several points throughout its runtime. Decoding these messages led to a fake address that was listed on the profile of a band called KFC Murder Chicks. This band featured homeless girls, and surprisingly, one of them reportedly worked in a warehouse, just like the mysterious girl who told the first 4chan user about Erratas. Looking further into this band revealed a YouTube upload of one of their songs which had the word Erratas in its description as well. The channel that uploaded this video, Todd Ellsworth, also had a relatively empty Twitter account with the word. The only noteworthy post on this account was this creepy, elongated portrait of a man. By this point, many people who were following the mystery assumed that Todd and the KFC Chicks band had something to do with Erratas. Or at least they knew something about this advanced algorithm that no one else did. But when asked about it, they denied having any knowledge about the term. Unfortunately, that's where the lead stopped. Users had so much information and connection points between various groups and people, but it led to nowhere. This left Erratas as just another unsolved mystery of the internet. That is until August 2020, when a YouTuber called Toxicologist managed to get an interview with a person named DJ Roswell. As it turned out, Roswell was behind everything from the very beginning. He was the leader of the KFC Murder Chicks band and wanted to promote his band with an ARG. So he was the one who created the lore surrounding Erratas and every puzzle piece connecting to it. As for this unsettling image, this turned out to just be a police sketch of a horrible criminal from Hawaii that had nothing to do with the band or the ARG. Roswell just used this picture because it was attention-grabbing. Unfortunately for Roswell, people weren't able to progress through the storyline fast enough, and many lost interest over time, giving a tragically mundane ending to the mystery of Erratas. Alan Tutorial. In June 2011, a YouTube channel called Alan Tutorial uploaded its first video called How to Leak on a Piece of Paper. This 1 minute and 15-second video didn't make any logical sense and was just a jumbled mess of random actions.
You rip off a piece of paper, and you're gonna put the paper on the floor. Next thing you do is you gotta take the fork, and you're gonna have to ram a hole inside.
The channel began producing videos of obscure tutorials, like teaching users how to make a windmill from household items, or how to fill a tiny bin with dirt. However, as time went on, users began to notice the mental health of the creator, Alan, begin to deteriorate. He went from gleefully explaining some illogical concept to crying during tutorials and getting accidentally hurt while trying to make the video. This marked a shifting point in the channel where it went from silly to often downright disturbing, and no video encapsulates this better than the one titled Disc Tutorial. It shows the host, Alan, getting kidnapped in a truck and slipping over his own blood, all while trying to make his usual tutorial. Even in captivity, Alan continued creating content with whatever he had access to, at one point even resorting to reading the news on camera just to stay connected with his audience. All of this, of course, turned out to be nothing more than a fictional storyline created by art student Alan Resnick. And while many of his longtime viewers understood this, newer viewers stumbling across his uploads out of context often couldn't make sense of what they were watching, with a concerned comment under the Disc Tutorial video reading, "Either this guy is a brilliant actor / art student, or something weird is happening and none of us suspect anything because we all think he's a brilliant actor / art student. I'm starting to have my doubts." All of this came to an end in December of 2014 when Alan posted his final video simply titled Tutorial, a nearly 2-minute upload in which Alan finds a way to bust through a wall and escape his captor, never to be seen again. Ever since this conclusion, fans have gone back and analyzed each video to find the hidden meaning and bits of lore. According to the most popular interpretation, the character Alan Resnick created suffers from autism and was living with his older brother and his girlfriend who didn't like him. This explains why he ends up homeless at one point as his uncaring family kicks him out. Some users have also speculated that the reason he's crying in the blue chair tutorial video is because it reminds him of the way he found his mother after her death. This theory is supported by the video's description, which reads, "If your chair is on the floor, here is how you get it back and pick up all the pieces of something broken and unfair." However, creator Alan Resnick has never confirmed or denied any of these theories, choosing to leave his years-long art project open for interpretation instead. This House Has People in It. This House Has People in It is an analog horror short film that was aired on Adult Swim back in March 2016. The short is often known for just how weird and disturbing its concept is. It was directed by Alan Resnick, the creator and actor of the Alan Tutorial channel we just discussed. Though, unlike Alan Tutorial, which started off a bit lighthearted and slowly descended into absolute madness, This House Has People in It wastes no time pulling viewers into its surreal, unsettling world. It starts with the footage of someone logging into a computer and choosing a specific video to play. The footage then cuts to the CCTV feed from a house with 9 cameras, and then cuts again to the main couple, Tom and Ann, arguing about where to go for vacation.
Too expensive.
No, it's not that expensive. Orlando's expensive. All the hotels and all the...
And immediately something is extremely wrong with the situation as we see a person lying on the kitchen floor while the couple ignores them completely. From there, we also see a repairman working in the basement and the son Jackson watching TV in the living room that is decorated for his birthday. We also learn that the person lying on the kitchen floor is Tom and Ann's teenage daughter, Madison. She had a fight with Ann 2 hours ago and has been lying there in anger ever since. After a few minutes, Tom tries to pick Madison up, only to make a disturbing discovery.
It is time.
What? Prime links. That is disgusting.
Madison appears to be completely stuck on the floor. The situation then goes from bad to horrific as Madison starts sinking through the kitchen floor. The repairman tries to help by putting a plank on Madison's face to stop her from sinking through. However, that does not work, resulting in Tom having a complete meltdown in the basement.
I'm ready for it, are you? I'm ready for anything. Beautiful. You've always been so beautiful.
You need to stop right now!
I praise you. I serve you.
Left with no other option, they make a final-ditch effort to save their daughter by placing a mattress underneath her. We eventually see Madison fall onto the mattress, which then immediately cuts to a shot of the mattress without her, implying that she fell through the basement floor as well. The short ends with the guests who gathered for Jackson's birthday lying down in the yard just like Madison, while Tom and Ann are freaking out inside. The short seems to carry a major theme of neglect that's prevalent throughout. For instance, we see Madison lie on the kitchen floor for 2 hours before Tom and Ann talk directly to her. Jackson is completely neglected by his parents. The baby doesn't have food in her bowl, and when Tom hands the baby to Grandma, she immediately sets it down, which ultimately results in her crawling out of the house. As a comment on YouTube puts it, I think the title, "This House Has People in It," is referring to this is a house, not a home. We are just people who live together, not a family. However, this was just the tip of the iceberg. You see, this short was released with a now defunct website called absurveillancesolutions.com. Visiting this site unlocked a fully functional ARG, which in turn unlocked hours of additional footage, dozens of images, and even chat logs between the family. Viewers also uncovered additional plot points hidden within the extended media, including one about a mysterious disease slowly spreading throughout the world of the film. It's so extensive that even 9 years after its release, fans still aren't sure if they've uncovered everything hidden within it.